My name is Diane Mercer. I'm 52. Last Tuesday at 7:47 p.m., my stepson Brent slid a check for $150,000 across my dining room table and told me I had 48 hours to sign away everything my husband left me, or he'd make sure I left with nothing. This is more than generous, Diane. Brent tapped the check with his index finger. His wife Amber sat beside him, her wine glass catching the chandelier light. Most stepmothers would be grateful. I looked at the paper in front of me. The number had a lot of zeros. The legal document beneath it had even more words. Words like waive all current and future claims, and vacate premises within 30 days, and relinquish any interest in Mercer Industrial Holdings. I need to read this, I said. There's nothing to read. Amber's voice was sweet as antifreeze. It's standard. You get the house buyout, we get the company, clean break. My hands were shaking. I pressed them flat against the mahogany table Charles and I had picked out together 17 years ago. Charles left me this house. Actually, Brent leaned back in his chair. Dad left me the company. The house is company property. Has been since 1997. You've just been living here as a courtesy. The way he said courtesy made my stomach drop. Before I go on, if stories about standing up for yourself mean something to you, please hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now and what time is it there. I met Charles Mercer when I was 35 years old. He was 53, a widower with a 21-year-old son who looked at me like I was shoplifting his inheritance. Our wedding was small. Brent didn't come. He sent a card that said, "Congratulations on your merger." Charles laughed when he opened it. I didn't. "He'll come around," Charles said. We were sitting on the back porch of this house, watching fireflies blink in the garden. He smelled like cedar and coffee. Brent's young. He thinks I'm replacing his mother. He doesn't understand that hearts don't work like that. What if he never comes around? I asked. Charles took my hand. His fingers were warm. Then he'll miss out on knowing an extraordinary woman. His loss, not ours. I wanted to believe him. I tried for 7 years. Then Charles got sick. The diagnosis came on a Thursday in March. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. The oncologist gave us 6 months. Charles lasted 19. During those 19 months, Brent visited twice. Once at the beginning, when Charles could still walk. Once at the end, when Charles couldn't recognize his own son anymore. Both times, Brent spent more time in Charles's home office than at his bedside. I spent every single day with Charles. I learned to change IV bags. I learned to read morphine dosages. I learned to sleep sitting up in a chair because Charles was afraid of being alone in the dark. I learned that love isn't just the fireflies and the porch swing. Sometimes love is holding a basin while someone you adore loses everything that made them feel human. Charles died on a Sunday morning at 6:14 a.m. The hospice nurse said it was peaceful. I don't remember. I only remember that the sun was coming through the window, and I thought it was cruel that the world kept being beautiful. Brent arrived 3 hours later. He hugged me. It felt like being embraced by a parking meter. "We'll get through this together," he said. I believed him for exactly 11 days. On day 12, Brent's lawyer called me. The funeral was over. Charles had been in the ground for less than 2 weeks. The lawyer's name was Kenneth Price. He had a voice like gravel in a blender. "Mrs. Mercer, we need to discuss the estate." "I have Charles's lawyer," I said. "Martin Reeves. He's handling everything." "Actually, Martin Reeves represented your husband's personal affairs. I represent Mercer Industrial. There's been some confusion about asset allocation." "What confusion?" "The house you're currently residing in is technically company property. We'll need to schedule a transition meeting." My face burned so hot I could feel my pulse in my teeth. "This is my home." "We understand this is difficult. We'll be in touch." He hung up. I called Martin Reeves immediately. His secretary said he was in court. I left 4 messages. He called back 6 days later. "Diane, I'm so sorry for your loss. I know this timing is terrible, But we need to talk about Charles's will. What about it? There are complications. Complications. That word would haunt me for months. The will reading happened in Martin's office on a Tuesday afternoon. Brent was there with Amber. They'd gotten married 6 months after Charles's diagnosis. I'd sent a gift. They never acknowledged it. Martin cleared his throat. Charles's will is relatively straightforward. The house goes to Diane as primary residence, with the caveat that the property title remains under Mercer Industrial's corporate holdings. Brent inherits 51% of company voting shares, effective immediately. Wait, I said, what about the other 49%? Martin looked uncomfortable. That's held in a trust. The trust terms are complex. We're still reviewing the documentation. Brent smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Basically, Diane, you get to live here, I run the company. Exactly what Dad wanted. I went home that day and stood in Charles's office for 20 minutes. Everything was exactly where he'd left it. His reading glasses on the desk, his coffee mug still stained. A framed photo of us from our honeymoon in Maine. I picked up the photo. We looked so happy. Charles had his arm around me, and I was laughing at something he'd said. I couldn't remember what. I put the photo back down. That's when I saw it. Tucked under the desk blotter, barely visible. A corner of cream-colored paper. I pulled it out. It was a business card. Eddie Collins, plant manager, Mercer Industrial. On the back, in Charles's handwriting, "Trust Eddie. He knows." I put the card in my pocket. The next morning, Brent called. "Diane, we need to talk about your role going forward." My role? With the company. I'm implementing some restructuring. I'll need you to sign off on some documents. What documents? Just formalities, confirming the transition of power. I'll have Amber bring them by. Amber arrived that afternoon with a stack of papers 3 inches thick. She set them on the kitchen counter like she was delivering pizza. "Just sign everywhere that's flagged," she said. "Brent needs these back by tomorrow." I started reading the first page. It was dense legal language, but certain phrases jumped out. Complete dissolution of spousal claims. Retroactive waiver of community property rights. Acknowledgement of separate asset status. "This says I'm waiving all claims to anything Charles owned," I said. Amber's smile was patient, condescending. "You don't have claims to anything, Diane. You were married for 7 years. The company's been in the Mercer family for 32. These documents just formalize what's already true. I need to show these to a lawyer. That's going to cost money. Do you have money, Diane?" I didn't answer. We both knew I didn't. I'd spent the last year and a half caring for Charles. I hadn't worked. Our savings had gone to medical bills that insurance wouldn't cover. The house was mortgage-free, but property taxes were $11,000 a year. I had $2,847 in my checking account. "I'm not signing anything without understanding it," I said. Amber's smile disappeared. "Brent won't like that." "Then Brent can explain it to me himself." She left. The papers stayed on my counter for 3 days. Every time I walked past them, my chest got tight. On day 4, I got a letter from Kenneth Price's office. Formal notice that Mercer Industrial was reconsidering the residential arrangement, and would I please contact them to discuss alternatives. I called Eddie Collins instead. He answered on the second ring. "Eddie Collins." "Mr. Collins, my name is Diane Mercer. I'm Charles Mercer's widow. I found your card in his office." Silence. Then, "Mrs. Mercer, I've been hoping you'd call. Charles wrote on your card that you know something. What do you know?" "Not on the phone. Can you meet me tomorrow? There's a diner on Northwest 23rd Avenue called Millie's. 7 a.m. I got there at 6:52. Eddie was already in a corner booth, a cup of coffee in front of him. He was maybe 60, with gray hair and hands that looked like they'd built things. He stood when he saw me. "Mrs. Mercer, thank you for coming." We sat. A waitress brought me coffee without asking. Eddie waited until she left. Charles talked about you, he said. A lot, especially near the end. You visited him? Every week. He couldn't always remember me, but I'd sit with him anyway. Tell him about the plant, the orders, the guys on the floor. Eddie's eyes were kind. He loved that company, built it from nothing. But he loved you more. My throat got tight. Why did he write your name on that card? Because he knew what Brent would do. He knew, and he tried to stop it. How? Eddie reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. He slid it across the table. It was a photocopy of a corporate document dated 8 years ago. The language was technical, but I understood enough. Charles had created a second trust, one that held 49% of Mercer Industrial voting shares. The trustee was listed as Martin Reeves. The beneficiary was me. I don't understand, I said. Martin said the trust was complicated. He didn't say I was the beneficiary. Martin doesn't know yet. The trust terms are time delayed. It doesn't activate until 6 months after Charles's death. That's next week. Eddie leaned forward. Mrs. Mercer, Charles made you the majority shareholder. You have 51% control. Brent has 49. The diner got very quiet. Or maybe that was just inside my head. Why would Charles do this? Because he spent 19 months watching who showed up and who didn't. He spent 19 months seeing who held his hand and who counted his money. And he spent 8 years before that watching Brent run the regional office into the ground. Eddie's voice was gentle. Charles loved his son, but he trusted you with his legacy. I read the document 3 times. My coffee got cold. Brent doesn't know about this, I said. No. What do I do? You wait. The trust activates automatically. Martin will notify you. Until then, don't sign anything Brent gives you. Eddie pulled out another piece of paper. And if Brent tries to pressure you, remember this. It was a photocopy of company financial records, 3 years of declining revenue in the division Brent had managed. Then a note in Charles's handwriting. B's decisions cost us $340,000. Covered it personally to protect him. Can't protect him anymore. I folded both papers carefully and put them in my purse. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me, just don't let Charles down. I went home and waited. 5 days later, Brent showed up without calling. I was in the garden, pulling weeds from the rose bushes Charles had planted for me. Brent's car pulled into the driveway at 4:17 p.m. He got out. Amber stayed in the passenger seat, watching through the window. Diane, we need to talk. I stood up. My knees popped. I was wearing gardening gloves covered in dirt. About what? You haven't returned Amber's documents. That's a problem. I told her I needed time to review them. You've had time. Brent's voice was tight. I need those signatures. The company is moving forward with a merger. I can't have delays. What merger? That's not your concern. If it involves the company Charles built, it's absolutely my concern. Brent's jaw clenched. You were married to my father for 7 years. I'm his son, his heir. You don't get to question my decisions. I'm not questioning your decisions. I'm protecting your father's legacy. My father's legacy is mine to protect. He stepped closer. Sign the papers, Diane, or I'll make this very difficult for you. How? The house, the property taxes, the utilities, all company expenses. If you're not cooperating with company directives, we'll need to reconsider those arrangements. My hands were shaking inside the gardening gloves. You're threatening to evict me. I'm reminding you of reality. You have no income, no assets, no legal standing. You're living here because I'm allowing it. Don't make me stop being generous. He left. I stood in the garden until the sun went down. Then I went inside and called Martin Reeves. Martin, when does Charles's trust activate? Tomorrow, actually. I was going to call you. We need to schedule a meeting. Tomorrow works. The meeting was at 10 a.m. I wore the navy blue dress I'd worn to Charles's funeral. It felt appropriate. Martin's office was on the 8th floor of a building downtown. The view overlooked the river. Martin was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with kind eyes and nervous hands. Mrs. Mercer, what I'm about to tell you is going to sound unbelievable. Try me. He opened a folder. Inside were documents I'd only seen photocopies of. Your husband created a trust 8 years ago. The trust holds 49% of Mercer Industrial voting shares. You're the beneficiary. As of today, those shares transfer to you completely. What does that mean? Combined with the 2% of shares Charles left you directly in his will, you now control 51% of the company. You're the majority shareholder. You have final say on all major decisions. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the arms of my chair. Brent told me he inherited 51%. Brent inherited 49%. His father let him believe it was 51. I suspect Charles wanted time for you to settle into the reality before Brent knew. Why would Charles do this? Martin's smile was sad. Because he watched you care for him for 19 months while his son visited twice. Because he knew Brent wasn't ready to run the company. Because he trusted you. I don't know anything about running a manufacturing company. You don't have to run it. You have to protect it. There's a difference. Martin pulled out another document. Charles left you detailed instructions. He predicted what Brent would try to do. He was very specific. The instructions were in a sealed envelope. Martin's name was on the outside in Charles's handwriting. I opened it carefully. The letter was 3 pages long. I read it twice before I could breathe normally. Dear Diane, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and Brent is already doing exactly what I knew he would do. He's trying to push you out. He's probably threatening you with the house, with money, with lawyers. He's telling you that you have no rights, no power, no say. He's wrong. Do you remember our first anniversary? We went to that little restaurant on Hawthorne Street, and I told you that you were the best decision I'd ever made. I meant it. You gave me 7 years of laughter when I thought I'd forgotten how. You gave me 19 months of dignity when I was losing everything else. You gave me hope. I watched Brent manage the regional office for 3 years. He's brilliant with presentations and terrible with people. He makes decisions that look good in quarterly reports and fall apart 6 months later. He cost the company $340,000 in bad contracts because he wouldn't listen to Eddie Collins or any of the floor managers who'd been there for 20 years. I covered the losses personally because I didn't want him to fail publicly. That was my mistake. I taught him that mistakes don't have consequences. I tried to talk to him. I tried to show him how to lead instead of manage. But Brent doesn't hear advice. He hears criticism, and he doesn't forgive it. The original trust documents are with Martin. You now control 51% of Mercer Industrial. Brent has 49. The bylaws require majority approval for any merger, acquisition, or sale of company assets. Brent can't do anything without your signature. He's going to try to trick you into signing away your rights. He'll offer you money. He'll threaten you with lawyers. He'll tell you that you don't deserve this, that you're not family, that you're taking what's rightfully his. Don't believe him. Inside this envelope, you'll also find copies of the financial records showing Brent's losses, witness statements from Eddie Collins and 4 other plant managers documenting Brent's management style, a letter I wrote to the board of directors 3 years ago expressing concerns about Brent's readiness, documentation of every time I personally covered his mistakes. I'm not doing this to punish Brent. I'm doing this to protect 247 employees who depend on Mercer Industrial for their livelihoods. I'm doing this because I built that company from nothing, and I can't watch it be destroyed by ego and impatience. You don't have to run the company, Diane. You just have to hold the line. Eddie Collins knows the business inside and out. The plant managers are loyal and competent. The board is solid. All you have to do is make sure Brent doesn't make decisions that hurt people to help himself. I know this is overwhelming. I know you didn't ask for this. But I also know you're stronger than you think you are. You held my hand through the worst 19 months of my life. You never flinched. You never complained. You never left. You're not just my wife. You're my partner, my equal, my choice. Don't let Brent bully you. Don't let him make you feel small. You're the majority shareholder of a $47 million company. You earned that, not through blood or birthright, but through love and loyalty, and showing up every single day when it mattered. All my love, always. Charles P. S. The annual shareholders meeting is in October at the Hilton Anatole. Brent will try to push through the merger there. Don't let him. The employees are counting on you. I sat in Martin's office for 15 minutes after I finished reading. Martin didn't interrupt. Finally, I said, "What's this merger Brent wants?" Martin pulled out another file. Consolidated Manufacturing Group. They're a corporate buyer. They acquire smaller manufacturing firms, strip the assets, sell the real estate, and outsource production overseas. They've made Brent an offer for Mercer Industrial. How much? 12 million. Brent would walk away with 5.8 million. You'd get 6.2 million. What happens to the employees? CMG's standard contract includes a 90-day transition period. After that, all positions are eliminated. The plant closes. 247 people lose their jobs. I felt something crack open inside my chest. Not pain, something colder. When's the shareholders meeting? October 15th, 3 weeks. I'll be there. I went home and didn't tell anyone what I knew. Brent called twice. I didn't answer. Amber showed up with the documents again. I told her through the door that I'd think about it. Time's running out, Diane, she said. Brent's not going to wait forever. Good, I said. The shareholders' meeting invitation arrived in the mail 6 days later. Formal cardstock, embossed lettering. I RSVP'd yes. Brent called that night. You're coming to the meeting? Charles always wanted me to be involved with the company, I said. I thought I'd start now. There's nothing for you to do there. It's a formality. Then it won't hurt for me to attend. Silence. Then, fine. Wear something appropriate. He hung up. The night before the meeting, I laid out my clothes, the same navy dress, Charles's favorite pearl necklace, sensible heels. I looked like someone's sympathetic widow. Exactly what I wanted. I didn't sleep. I watched the clock flip from 11:47 p.m. to 6:14 a.m., the same time Charles had died. I took it as a sign. The Hilton Anatole ballroom was excessive. Crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows, round tables with white tablecloths. Maybe 70 people were there. Board members, major shareholders, plant managers. Eddie Collins was near the back. He nodded when he saw me. Brent was at the front table with Amber. He wore a charcoal suit and confidence like cologne. When he saw me, his smile froze for half a second. Diane, glad you could make it. Wouldn't miss it? I sat 3 rows back, close enough to hear everything, far enough to not draw attention. The meeting started at 10 a.m. exactly. The board chairman, Robert Hensley, welcomed everyone. Quarterly reports were presented, revenue was up, profit margins were stable. Applause. Then Brent stood up. Before we close, I want to introduce an exciting opportunity. Consolidated Manufacturing Group has made an offer to acquire Mercer Industrial. This merger would provide substantial returns for our shareholders and position us for significant growth. Murmurs around the room. Eddie Collins sat very still. Brent continued. The offer is $12 million. The board has reviewed the terms. We believe this is in everyone's best interest. I'm calling for a vote today. Robert Hensley looked uncomfortable. Brent, the bylaws require majority shareholder approval for any sale or merger. Have you secured that? My father left me 51% of the company. I have majority control. Actually, I said. Every head in the room turned. I stood up. My legs felt like water, but I stayed upright. Actually, Charles left you 49%. I have 51%. Brent's face went white, then red. That's not possible. Martin? I looked at the lawyer sitting near the front. Could you confirm? Martin Reeves stood. He opened his briefcase and pulled out documents. As of 6 months after Charles Mercer's death, the trust he established transferred 49% of company shares to Diane Mercer. Combined with the 2% left to her directly in the will, Mrs. Mercer controls 51% of Mercer Industrial. She is the majority shareholder. The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Brent's face had gone from red to purple. "This is fraud," he said. "She manipulated him. He was sick. He didn't know what he was doing." "Your father created the trust 8 years ago," Martin said calmly. "Long before his diagnosis, the documentation is ironclad. I'm contesting this. You're welcome to try, but until a court rules otherwise, Mrs. Mercer's vote is required for any major company decision." Brent turned to me. His eyes were blazing. "You have no idea what you're doing. You'll destroy this company." "No," I said. My voice was steady, calm. "You are going to destroy this company. CMG doesn't want to grow Mercer Industrial. They want to strip it for parts and fire everyone who works here." Eddie Collins stood up. "She's right. I've seen CMG's playbook. They bought Harrison Metalworks 2 years ago, promised growth, fired everyone within 6 months." Other voices joined in: plant managers, floor supervisors, people who'd worked for Charles for decades. Amber grabbed Brent's arm, but he shook her off. "This is my company. My father built it. I'm his son." "And I'm his widow," I said. "The person he chose to protect what he built. The person he trusted to show up." "You showed up to play nurse. That doesn't make you qualified to run a manufacturing company." "You're right. I'm not qualified to run it, but I'm qualified to protect it. And I'm qualified to remember that 247 people depend on Mercer Industrial for their livelihoods. People your father cared about. People you were willing to sacrifice for a $5 million payout." Brent took a step toward me. Robert Hensley stood up. "That's enough." "She has no right. She has majority control," Robert said firmly, "which means she has every right. Unless you're prepared to challenge the trust in court, this meeting is over." Brent looked around the room. Faces that had been friendly minutes ago were now closed off, suspicious. Eddie Collins was shaking his head. The other plant managers were whispering. "Fine," Brent said. His voice was ice. "Vote no on the merger. Run the company into the ground. When you come crawling back, don't expect me to save you." He walked out. Amber followed, her heels clicking on the marble floor. The room stayed silent for a long moment. Then Robert Hensley cleared his throat. "Well, I think we can table the merger discussion. Mrs. Mercer, would you like to say anything?" I looked around the room. 70 faces staring at me, waiting. Charles built this company because he believed in making things that lasted. He believed in treating people fairly. He believed that a business should serve the community, not just the shareholders. I took a breath. "I don't know how to run a manufacturing company, but I know how to listen. I know how to learn. And I know how to keep a promise. Charles asked me to protect what he built. I'm going to do exactly that." Eddie Collins started clapping, slowly at first, then others joined. Within seconds, the whole room was applauding. I sat down. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to tuck them under my legs. The meeting ended 20 minutes later. People came up to shake my hand. Thank me. Tell me stories about Charles. Eddie Collins was the last one. "You did good, Mrs. Mercer." I was terrified. "Charles knew you would be. He also knew you'd do it anyway." Eddie smiled. "That's why he chose you." I drove home in a daze. The house felt different when I walked in, lighter somehow. I went to Charles's office and stood where I'd stood months ago. The photo from our honeymoon was still on the desk. I picked it up. "I kept the promise," I said out loud. "I hope that's okay." The house was quiet, but it felt like an answer. Brent tried to contest the trust. His lawyer filed papers. Martin filed counterpapers. 6 months later, a judge ruled in my favor. The trust was valid. My control was absolute. Brent sold his 49% to a private equity firm that specialized in ethical manufacturing. They were happy to be minority shareholders. They didn't push for mergers or layoffs. They just wanted steady returns. I hired a CEO who'd worked in manufacturing for 30 years. I joined the board. I learned the business slowly. Eddie Collins taught me to read production reports. The plant managers taught me their names and their kids' names and what problems kept them up at night. A year later, Mercer Industrial's revenue was up 18%. We'd hired 47 new employees. The union negotiated a better benefits package. Charles's legacy wasn't just surviving, it was growing. I still live in the house. The rose bushes are thriving. I planted new ones this spring. Lavender and white, Charles's favorites. Sometimes I sit on the back porch with my coffee and watch the fireflies. I think about what Charles said on our first anniversary. That I was the best decision he'd ever made. I think he was mine, too. If you've ever been told you don't belong somewhere, type "I belonged" in the comments. Or if you're still fighting to prove your place, type "I'm still fighting." Both are brave. Both are valid. If this story meant something to you, check the description for more stories just like this one. Thank you for being here. And remember, you don't need permission to protect what matters. You just need the courage to show up.